Ladies and gentlemen, happy St. Patrick's Day or happy belated St. Patrick's Day, depending on when you're listening to this. Welcome to the luckiest edition of the Third Intermission Podcast. It's your boy Dave signing on for this evening. Follow us at the socials at Toronto Third on Instagram, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And you can always get listen to us and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast from. That includes Spotify, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, and our friends over at Podbean. It's a three-person team tonight. We've got the right hand of the king himself, a.k.a. the Fedora Man, a.k.a. Mr. Steal Your Girl, a.k.a. the weirdest man in Edmonton right now, Avery Lewis McDougall. Avery, wagwan.
Yo, the weirdest man. For what reason? What's the reason here? All right, man. Ridiculous.
Real talk, though. You good?
No, I'm good. Yeah, I'm just staying busy here, getting ready for the end of the season here in Edmonton. As we know, the playoffs are going to be here very, very, very soon.
Yes. And I think we're all excited for that. Edmonton, of course, still locked into playoff positioning right now, trying to hopefully get their hands on the Pacific Division crown. We also have First Lady of Black Hockey herself, a.k.a. the most gorgeous woman in Black Hockey herself, Miss Marsha Joseph. Marsha, what's good?
Yeah, we out here. As Avery said, the hockey is hockeying. The playoffs are soon. And why is he always catching strays, man?
Listen, when you're the right hand of the king, you always catch the strays. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how it is.
Need to get this man like a baseball bat and just start swinging left, right to dodge them out of the way.
See if it's not that, it's Dave saying something that needs me to put up the disclaimer on Dave Barnett's thoughts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, man.
Oh, why you gotta expose me like that, man? Like, yo, what's wrong with you? Ladies and gentlemen, this is how it goes sometimes because like, yo, every cat seem to not catch strays and then at the same time complain about catching strays. So it is what it is at this point. Anyways, we got a fun show for you tonight. Some of the things we're going to talk about: Leafs and Sens. Is the Battle of Ontario back on? We'll definitely talk about that. We're also going to look into former Coyotes owner suing Arizona State. Yeah, we're going to pop off about that. We're also going to look into the P-Dub situation, and then we are going to look into some Black excellence as well, as one of our new favorite players has finally decided to step up and just make a name for himself in the league, even though he already has been, but he's making more headway within the last few weeks. That and more. But first things first, let's get to the elephant in the room, which is the Battle of Ontario, which happened back on Saturday. Ottawa, of course, sweeping the season series with the Leafdom, with a 4-2 victory over the Leafdom in Toronto's Yad. Gotta say, Toronto really did not do well back on Saturday night against their eastern cousins in the same province, and it has created some animosity between two cities yet again. This is the first time we've seen anything of that nature since 2002, but of course, like we said, or like it's been stated before, it's not really a battle unless, say, one side actually, or unless both sides actually win. And in Toronto's case, like, Toronto's been the one that has actually been clapping Ottawa's cheeks for like the last almost 30 years. So, I mean, can't really call it a battle until, say, something different happens. Avery, and Marsha, I actually want to hear your thoughts on all this, considering game just went down Saturday night. How do y'all feel?
First of all, I think hockey is better when you get competitive matchups between Toronto and Ottawa. When both these teams are in a position of making the postseason, I think things are far better. We've seen Ottawa over the past few years try to go through the wilderness, try to recapture what made them great in the mid 2010s, mid 2000s, that's a plucky young team that's been backed by solid goaltending from Linus Allmark. So I think if you're a Leafs fan, you cannot overlook Ottawa in a possible playoff series.
No, you definitively can't. And looking at the situation right now, Ottawa has loaded up some firepower with Dylan Cousins as well during the trade deadline, and of course Linus Ullmark basically standing on his head now. And Ottawa has won 6 straight games, while the Leafs are currently slumping. Marsha, like, is it time for the Leafs to hit the panic button, or is it time for the Leafs to regroup and say, "Listen, stop, top your noise"?
Honestly, no panic button, but I will say, like, maybe splash some cold water on our face and wake up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Ottawa is getting to a caliber where, as you said, like, this is real. You know, they're going to be in the playoffs. We might see them in the playoffs. If we do, think that'll be really cool, considering the last time we went up against them in the playoffs was about 20 years ago, the 2004 quarterfinals.
No, it was 2002. 2004, I think we had it wasn't Philly. It was I think I might be wrong. Like, yeah, it could be 2004. Actually, we're gonna fact check that real quick.
Yes, but like I said, you know, in the times where we constantly like shat on Ottawa, them like giving us the opportunity to have another opponent in the playoffs that isn't Boston, Tampa, Florida is great. And I'm excited for that opportunity if that is what we get to. Um, but also it's kind of giving them a little nudge forward too, because every time we see Ottawa, it seems to be this ha ha, it's Ottawa. And then what, the past 5 or 6 games we've just been crushed by them. Like, that's the
Yeah.
team that you need to look to say, what are we doing wrong? What are they doing right? Goaltending aside, because
Mhm.
the goaltending was really good yesterday on their end. But we need to pick it up.
Yes. And just to go back into things here, yes, it has been confirmed. The last time the Leafs did play Ottawa was in 2004 in the Eastern Conference quarterfinals. Of course, the Leafs the Leafs went to 7 games and won in 7 games. Although, ideally speaking, Toronto could have slapped them in 6, but then again, I digress. But ideally speaking, like it is exciting to see these two teams basically just get ready to beat the living daylight out of each other once again. And you know what? Like, I'm definitely cool with that. But at the same point in time, you cannot, like Avery said earlier in the episode, you cannot sleep on this team. The second you do is the second they will basically thump you in the eye. Like, look at Ottawa's roster right now. You have Brady. No, it's Brady Tkachuk, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you have Brady Tkachuk. You have Dylan Cousins. You have Linus Ullmark in net. You have Tim Stutzla as your center. Shane Pinto as your center. You have David Perron. David Perron, obviously from like what an addition from Vegas from however long ago. This dude's like basically like this dude is like your veteran winger. And this man has been around the block a good couple of times. Claude Giroux has also been a decent piece for Philly and beyond over the last few years. Like, if these guys had if these guys have like solid games, I feel like Toronto could be in a real world of hurt if, say, something does go down. I like if a playoff series were to happen between these two teams right now, like, I would genuinely say, and I'm saying this as a Leafs fan, like, Toronto might actually have Toronto might bite off a little more than they can chew if, like, say, if these two teams actually link up. I could be completely.
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And this is just the trajectory that they've been on from the past few games that they're playing. And like I said before, I'm like, this is the slump. Let them have the slump, but you need to actually be actively learning and getting closer to closing those gaps, which obviously we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. And we hope that that's the mindset going forward. But if we go based off of the last game that was played, we were all over the place.
Yeah.
And we used to not be all over the place. So maybe the Leafs a month ago could kick it with Ottawa, but like obviously there's still time left in the season.
Mm-hmm.
Figure your shit out so we're not left in the dust.
No, I fully agree with that. And Toronto has a legitimate opportunity to not shit the bed. And of course, we say that every year. But again, I don't think with Craig Berube there's like really any room for error in this situation because it's like you gave Matthews the C, you have a 1A, 1B situation between Stellars and Wall. And on top of that, your defense core basically just got bolstered with Chris Tanev back in the lineup. You have toughness with Brendan Carlo. You also have toughness with Scott Laughton. You have solid scoring in your core four. Why not utilize those weapons to good use and stop playing like you're playing junior hockey? Like this is the big boy leagues now. Like you can't be playing like like you don't have a care in the world and like you're just gonna get a contract and not give a shit. Like you've got to step up at this point. We're maybe a month out from basically game one of the quarterfinals or quote unquote the first round of the NHL playoffs. Like get yourselves together, guys.
And I know everyone always says the play of the regular season does not dictate the play of the playoffs. And I sure as hell hope so. Because
I fully agree.
Like a little bit of a muted vibe from some of our loves who might have been super explosive in the past couple seasons. So in my head, I'm interpreting that as we're refining our skills. We're doing really cool, weird things to figure the inner workings out. We can get past whatever mental blocks or mental humps we get the second we enter the playoffs. And it's going to be like streamlined, like perfection in the playoffs.
No.
But remember, we can't let it loose too much because we still got to get to the playoffs.
No, I fully agree. And like Toronto has really found a way to fall off a little bit over the last little while because now the Leafs have lost 2 straight and they are now free falling into say a very uncomfortable situation in the Atlantic Division standings. Of course, Toronto right now currently sitting on 81 points, and now Tampa has actually leapfrogged them for second in the Atlantic, and Ottawa's right behind them with just 4 points in closing in. And Toronto really needs to find a way to get themselves together because they have 2 games in hand on Florida, and they need to be able to find a way to get themselves in gear because the Florida loss was, although it was a very well played game, it was still a pretty shitty loss. Let's be honest here. And then on top of that, now you basically have your cousins to the east basically clapping you up one time. Like you cannot be doing that. Like I don't know if Austin is saying some stuff in the locker room that needs to be said, but something needs to be done because again, you have 16 games left in the season. You've got some good teams in Colorado, Nashville. You've got the Kings. You've got the Panthers again for another couple games at least. You have Montreal. You have a potential first round matchup in Tampa Bay, and then you have the Red Wings and the Sabres just to finish the season out. Plus, you also have Carolina. You need to be able to strike while the iron's hot in this situation. Like the first half of April, like that's going to be your measuring stick at this point. If you cannot go into this entire playoff run and take control of the situation, best believe that it's going to be another early first round exit, and somebody's getting shipped off at that point.
And the big thing too is that you're looking at the matchup right now with Tampa in that 2-3 matchup. You want to have home ice advantage against the Lightning. Tampa Bay, at the time of this taping, right now in the Eastern Conference, they have a home record of 23-8-2. You want to be at home. You don't want to go to Tampa for that series in round one.
No, I fully agree with that, and it's like obviously with say previous years between the Leafs and the Lightning, like the Leafs finally getting one back in 2023. Like Toronto has to make sure that they do not, under any circumstances, find ways to like just purposely lose, and only to get themselves the team that they want to play. Like dead ass, like I don't want the Leafs to have to deal with that situation again. So Toronto really has to find a way to figure themselves out. They really do. Going into somebody else's yard and like with a great home record like Tampa Bay, like you said, because you said what 23-8-2, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Going into somebody else's yard with like say basically more home wins than say road wins, and you know being in like I guess the dead of Florida where you were practically coming off like say what 10 playoff appearances, the 10 straight playoff appearances, 2 Stanley Cups, 3 Eastern Conference titles within the last 5-6 years. And even though you're missing, like, say, some great firepower in Steven Stamkos, you still have a deadly ass Lightning team that does not play around. And if I'm Toronto, like I'm not looking at the situation like, oh, okay, like let me just try and get out of this unscathed. It's like, no, like we've like despite the fact that they're old, they can still kick our ass in the situation. My ideal situation would have been, say, had Toronto actually won their game against Florida, like it would have given them an edge in, say, the season series and would have at least somewhat locked up the Atlantic for them. They now have 2 opportunities to do that with Florida currently up 1-0 on them. Toronto needs to make sure, the Leafs need to make sure that they can get the job done, because if they don't, then it's going to be a very early spring for the Leafs. Avery, any other thoughts?
No, you said it right there. It's right now. This team has to find a way to get the consistency back, or else again next year is going to be a very new look team. I mean, I said before in this show, if this Leafs team can't wait to break on through, I think this now falls on Brendan Shanahan. How many more Bulls does Shanahan have when you've already gone through a GM change, numerous coaching changes? At a certain point, this falls on Brendan Shanahan if he can't get it done again.
Mm-hmm. No, I think the axe is ready to fall on his head at this point. And of course, the Leafs currently have pending ownership changes, with Rogers looking to apparently fully take over Larry Tannenbaum's ownership stake in MLSC. And now with Rogers only 75% of the company as it stands right now, like what's the direction that say the new parent is going to take in this situation? Like, are they going to keep Shanahan? Are they going to find a way to like get somebody else? Like, are they actually going to be able to spend the money to be able to find somebody that's legitimately worth the money that it's being printed on, and help Toronto actually get a Stanley Cup for the first time since 1967? Because we're currently all at 58 years since Toronto's won a cup. And I'm not sure if it's this year or next year, but this might be the last time you actually get to see any iteration of a Toronto Maple Leafs team on the Stanley Cup. And the Leafs really need to do something about that. Like, I know we bring this up at least once or twice a season, but like this is getting really scary for the Leafs as it stands, because every other original 6 team has their name on a cup within the last 30 years. Toronto does not. So either
pain and sorrow.
Yeah, exactly. So something have to be done, or just the next time you see the Leafs on the Stanley Cup, go to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto. So that's all you're seeing. Folks, I can't iterate this enough. Like you as a Leafs fan, you have to sit there and wonder, like, okay, Wagwan in this situation. You want like I would say some more colorful words in this situation, but I'm just trying to be as professional as I can in this moment. But same point in time, you kind of have to. You can't help but be a little frustrated about the fact that, like, say, you've got good teams like Ottawa on the rise, Buffalo on the rise, Detroit also on the rise as well. You've got older teams like Tampa Bay and Boston still kicking the Leafs down the road. You have a potential back-to-back winner in Florida, actually basically kicking ass right now in the Atlantic. And then, of course, say looking at other teams in the Eastern Conference, like Washington has had a surprise resurgence. You also have the Devils. You have Carolina. You have the Blue Jackets, who have basically been roasting us on Twitter and Instagram for like a hot minute, saying that, oh, well, thank you for the first round bye. Like if I'm the Leafs, like I'm having that in the locker room and I'm using that as motivation to basically spear somebody. But like Toronto has to figure it out. Anyways, rant over. Leafs play the Flames on St. Patrick's Day. Leafs will be wearing their St. Patty's jersey on Monday night in the Big Bank Arena. And then, of course, they'll be taking on the Avalanche later this week. They will be at home on Wednesday. Thursday, they'll be at Madison Square Garden. And then Saturday, they will be taking on the Predators. So, 4 games for the Leafdom. Hopefully, we go 4-4 or at least 3-4 in the situation and go from there. All right. We are going to go on to the current situation in Arizona. Avery, I'm going to let you take this one.
Yes, in a story that has just gone from silly to uber silly to just outright ridiculous. If you remember the name Alex Morello, he was the former owner of the now suspended Arizona Coyotes franchise. And the Coyotes played their last 2 seasons at Mulled Arena on the campus of Arizona State. Right now, Morello is suing Arizona State for his $3.5 million security deposit, which the team had to give to Arizona State. That was paid directly to the school, and it was paid up front because pretty much the school wanted the Coyotes to give them money because we've seen the Coyotes in the past be derelict in payments in other areas under the Morello tenure, and it's silly because Morello and ownership, they're saying that the filing was a forced sale of the Coyotes hockey franchise, counts as force majeure event, and they are basically saying that an act of God forced them out of Mulled Arena. That is not true. The situation was in large part all on Alex Morello. This is like the Coyotes' tenure ending in Phoenix is on Morello. This is not some act of God. This is not misfortune. Incompetence is why the Coyotes left Arizona. Incompetence is why that team is no longer in Arizona. So it is silly to see Morello try and pin this on Arizona State, pin this on the other place that gave them a place to play when they had nowhere else to play after they were forced out of Gila River Arena in Glendale, Arizona. So it's just very, very dumb right now. That team deserves better. That region deserves better. And Alex Morello, dude, it is a bold thing to demand your security deposit back when you sold this team for what, close to $1 billion, and you've walked away from your duty as owner of the Coyotes, and you walked away from the rights to own this team going forward. So It's a silly man trying to get back money that really he doesn't deserve.
Boo.
Thank you, Marshall.
Tomato, watermelon, chair.
Look at the bricks at this point. The bricks that he needed to use to build an arena in Arizona. That's what we're throwing at him. Because come on, leave God out of this, man.
Right? Hey, yo, let me dash cinder block and on blood clot face. What?
Like how come on. Really and truly. We need to like I'm a little delulu, but like I'm not that delulu. To say you want to get 3.5 mil back from a post-secondary institution that could very well use the money to you could have said, "Hey, I feel like I should get it back, but in the name of Arizona hockey, I'm going to let you keep this as a nice donation to enhance your hockey facilities and your institution as a whole." He could have like flipped himself into the good guy here. But
For
he
once.
said, "Nah, I'm gonna be petty and I'm gonna continue the nonsense that everyone has known me for the past how many years and say, yeah, because I was forced to sell, like no one could have expected that, I just feel like I should get my $3.5 million back. I should."
So, as the kids would say on the internet, are you a dumbass? Are you dumb? Are you good? Are you fried? Are you zooked, my guy?
I
There's
just don't understand.
so many questions that you can ask in this situation, but like I think the biggest thing that we can all ask is, what wrong with you? I would say something much worse, but you know what? Like I'm trying to be a good boy right now. So, but
There's just no proof. Like,
right?
I want to see what him and his lawyers are going to use as the burden of proof to say that this really was, like, force majeure. Because there's a fully public timeline of multiple attempts to try to move this team in various places in Arizona, all of them failing. So you had to have known that this was coming.
Agreed.
Yeah, like what unavoidable thing happened? Was there a hurricane that took out the arena? Did a meteorite demolish Mulled Arena? Like you are trying to get out of your contract, which was a 3-year agreement. The Coyotes signed a 3-year agreement with Arizona State, and yes, they didn't play all 3 years there, but no act of God, no unfortunate incident prevented you from playing that 3rd year there. Besides your incompetence as an owner.
We're just wasting people's time now.
Wasting people's time and energy at this point. But at this rate, it's like you cannot be 100% serious to say, quote unquote, "Oh, let me get my money back from a school." Like that's some real Mr. Burns type shit, right?
People already didn't like you.
Right? It's like, dog. Now I have to like buy, waste, like say, a mortgage payment on some eggs just to throw at your damn house. Like, what's wrong with you?
And again, we're forgetting this man is a billionaire. $3.5 million to amount of that stature.
Oh, that's not even a drop of piss in the toilet, man. Like, yo, that's crazy.
No, it actually isn't.
Like, that's crazy. How are you a billionaire and you're mad over $3.5 million? That's like that's 3.5 pennies, dog.
That makes me think, because we're talking extremes now, that makes me think that he doesn't have access to any of the money from the sale. Because why else would he be going after $3.5 million after you just sold the team that you owned?
That is a great question in that situation, because if you do not have access to the funds, or say the funds are like literally tied up in, I guess, other legal red tape, and I guess escrow really hasn't closed in that situation, I can kind of see why, but it's also extremely stupid for him to do that.
Yeah, something doesn't make sense. It
The
is
math ain't mathing.
so strange. No, exactly. The math is not mathing as to why you're going after that. And we all thought we were free of this man. We all thought we were free of the Morello family and their sheer headache situation in Arizona hockey. But they keep coming back and they keep embarrassing themselves on a national stage over and over and over again regarding pro hockey.
Like this is pretty much like every time Drew McIntyre bitches about something. Like, yo, you're just consistently hearing him complain and complain and complain. And then when you think he's gone, he's back complaining and complaining and complaining to the point where we're all tired of it. And this is exactly like, I guess, the equivalent of it. Drew, if you're listening to this, we're sorry. Please don't claymore me when you see me on the street. Because, like, yo, there's nothing scarier than a big, tall, angry Scottish man running at you, ready to kick you in the face. I ain't about that. I ain't trying to catch that. I don't want it on my bingo card in 2025 and beyond. Okay?
Now let's tweet at Drew McIntyre on Twitter when the show goes up.
No, hell no. Okay, I have the utmost respect for Drew, but at the same time, he can catch strays every once in a while. But same point in time, I ain't trying to get roasted by this man, or kicked by this man in the face. Anyways, happy WrestleMania season, y'all. Anyways, going back to the topic at hand here. This man really does need to be, like, speaking of someone who needs to be kicked in the face, this man really does need to be kicked in the face for the fact that, like, you know, you're going after a school for $3.5 million. You know what I mean?
It is. This is why. It's clear the NHL is eventually going to go back to Arizona one day. It's been bookmarked. It's been telegraphed that in a few years, the expansion teams coming are going to be a combination of a Houston, Atlanta, and an Arizona. Just depends on what year and what order. Mm-hmm. But I would love to see in 6, 7, 8 years, we get the Coyotes are rebooted again, and they actually run and they accomplish everything that Morello couldn't do. I would love that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Be like, hey, so remember that time you owned the Coyotes and you messed up? So I'm going to do 10 times better than you and make you look stupid.
I would love that. If someone could actually get a new arena built and they do everything he said he was going to do and they do it faster than him, I would love that so much.
Yeah. Just be like 50 pulling up on the street being like, ah. Okay. That didn't go as well as I would have liked for that to go.
Anyways. Yo, this guy.
We're gonna keep an eye on this situation real quick, but of course, Alex Morello, if you're listening right now, go suck yourself. Yeah, go suck yourself. Anyways, on to bigger and better things. We're going to look at the P Dub right now before we go off to our last topic. PWHL, of course, heating up right now. At the time of this recording, Minnesota and New York were currently facing off at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. Let's take a look at the P-Dub standings really, really quickly here before we move any further. Right now, as it stands, the Sirens are currently dead last in the P-Dub right now with 24 points. Minnesota Frost, of course, the only other American team apart from Boston, currently right now sitting fourth at 35 points. Scepters, of course, your homegrown Toronto Scepters, currently sitting in third. Montreal leading the league with 44 points. Ottawa on the outside looking in with 30 points respectively. And it looks like right now, at the time of this recording, the Sirens have taken out the Frost by a score of 4-1 in Detroit as part of a P-Dub takeover game. We always try to talk about this real quick, but again, I do have to bring this topic up. Who is the next city for expansion in the PWHL? And Marsha, I'm going to start with you first because always women first and women last. Women last in everything. So let's go.
That's a good question. And I feel like last time I said Pittsburgh, I'm still on the Pittsburgh vibe, but I'm trying to be original. um, hmm. Thinking about where we are already, where we need to be. I think we need another team in the West, to be completely honest with you.
I agree.
Um, I
This
think
is where
Vancouver
Avery
would
might
be
come in on this
nice.
one.
Yeah, Vancouver would be nice. Edmonton would be nice. Abbotsford would be nice. But the same thing that I said, however long ago it was when we had that conversation, cannot be one team. It needs to be like a minimum of two or three if you're making that expansion into the West to really make it fruitful. Because when you think of logistics like travel and cost and where people are going to play and planning out the schedule, you need to make it worthwhile for every single team involved.
Hmm. Avery, what about you? What do you think? Who is next to get a beat up team?
Yeah, I've said it for a minute now. I do think that's going to be probably either Quebec City or a Detroit. We saw again great crowd in Detroit for their game, for their takeover tour game, and we've seen over the past couple of years here how these different leagues, be it the PW, be it the PHF, other leagues have tried and gone to go into different markets like Pittsburgh, Chicago, Detroit. So I think that we're going to get for further expansion, which will be announced if we're going to expand yay or nay pretty soon here for 2026. I think it's either going to be one of three teams or two or three teams between Quebec City, Detroit, or Pittsburgh. So I would love to see it be Quebec City and Detroit for next year.
And to add to that, heavy on Detroit because this
Great
is
atmosphere.
twice now that they've broken an American professional women's hockey attendance record.
Yes.
Tonight's game with 14,288 people in attendance, and it was
Mm-hmm.
broken initially broken last year on this same day, um, March 16th, with this game, right? So that number one is like, why the hell not Detroit? Like
Mm-hmm.
the alarm bells are going off, but also like just the continued growth of the league. Because I was also reading that with the Takeover Series game today, um, it marks over 1 million fans attending games like PWHL games
Mm-hmm.
since its inception, which is like
One of them at
just
what point?
14 months, like a year and a bit.
Yep.
Absolutely wild. I love it.
Hey, it's what we love to see at this point. I mean, of course, women's sports has been taking off like considerably well since. Well, I mean, the WNBA has been around since like what 96, 97. Um, and of course, women's hockey has been around for a very long time. But like now, of course, with all the TV deals and everything, it's like it's only a matter of time before women's sports is on par with men's sports. But same at the same juncture, it's really nice to see that like like some barns are being filled with like fans who care about women's hockey, and it's cool. Like I saw the Battle of Bay Street last year, and it was one of the livest. It was one of the livest things I had ever seen. Um, now the Scepters are playing at Coca-Cola Coliseum, and like every single game is sold out to the point where it's like if you're a Marlies fan, you're legitimately like, and excuse my language when I say this, but like, what the fuck is going on here? So, like, it's really cool. It's really cool to see that. Like, I know the Tempo are starting next year. AFC Toronto is actually starting next month. Yes, we have a women's soccer team, and they're starting next month.
You're
So, I mean, sky's the limit for women's sports, especially within the city of Toronto and beyond. Um, I would like to say in this conversation, like I would much rather not see the P Dub go back to New Jersey because like it was just terrible to see everything in the Prudential Center and see almost next to no one there. You know, it was bad. So like of course New Jersey is not the type of market you want to have for women's hockey.
Well, we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for the Sirens. And look at the PDAP right now. I said it earlier. I said a few weeks ago how the class of the league is Montreal. Montreal still remains in first place in the league, and it's really a matter of right now seeing can Boston catch the Victoire for first in the league right now, as Montreal sits at 44 points.
Well, I mean, what? There's only about 7, 8, maybe 9 games left for each of these teams, maybe less than that. So, I mean, it's the race to first place is going to be very interesting. I know for a fact that the Sirens have practically crashed out of any playoff hopes at this point.
Yeah, this has been another tough year for New York. Yeah, back-to-back years for New York where they've just been struggling to really getting consistency going forward. And I enjoy New York a lot. I enjoy Alex Carpenter and what that team brings, but they have not been able to be a consistent team in their first years of existence.
So it's one of those things that we're going to have to look into in this situation. You know, hopefully New York can turn it around next season. On a semi-similar note, of course, the P-Dub trade deadline has come and gone, and there was actually only one deal on the docket for the entire trade deadline day. Actually, if I can pull that up real quick. The lone trade actually happened between Toronto and Montreal, so Caitlin Willoughby has gone from Toronto to Montreal in exchange for Anna... Avery, can you pronounce this name for me?
One sec, Dave.
I don't know if it's Kjeldin or Kelvin or something like that. I don't want to butcher it, and I feel bad right now considering P-Dub or the Scepters are some big fans of ours. So I really do feel terrible right now.
Okay, you know what, Dave? Why don't we redo it and just say I would say there's only one trade on the PWHL trade deadline. You don't say the name, but just you can flip it to what are your thoughts on the fact that there is so few trades, because it's an actual story in which Ian Kenny wrote about why there is so little trade action. You can flip it and just say there's only one trade, and why do we think maybe there's so little why do you think there's so little action when it comes to trades in this league?
Actually, you know what? Let's do that. Considering we're still recording this anyway. Why not just ask that same question? Like, why has there only been one? Why was there like a lack of deadline deals in the P-Dub at this point? Because I understand it's only been 2 seasons, but like you'd think like there would be a flurry of movement, but instead it's basically the top team and the third place team. Mind you, I get that there's only 6 teams in the league right now as it stands.
Well, there's a few reasons for that, and my colleague at the Hockey News, Ian Kennedy, broke it down quite well, and it goes to a few reasons why. One of them is that draft picks in the league cannot be traded. You can't trade draft picks in the PWHL, so that might hold off on GMs on really deciding to make a deal for a player. It's all player in, player out. It's strictly player for player, so that can affect why a team will make a trade. And there's no development league. There's no AHL version of there's no AHL to send the player to. Players with multi-year contracts can't be cut or moved to reserve. So there's so little leeway to make a trade work in the PWHL. And unless things are changed when it comes to roster rules or development of a second league or salary changes, you're not going to see a trade deadline in the P-Dub be active for a while.
That is really something to think about. Of course, I was never aware of the fact that like you couldn't trade draft picks, so that's something that's completely new to me. So thank you for educating me on that. Also, at the same point in time, it's just like, okay, now that there's basically, I guess, no other assets other than players just to basically be traded left and right. It's like, for me, the importance of deadline day for me, at least in my honest to God opinion, is like, say, okay, if a team's rebuilding, like, what picks can I take in order to be able to get decent players so that I can actually get back on top? In the PW, it's just that element's been taken out, and I guess like I guess for me personally, it just kind of feels a little not necessarily hollow, but just a little more of a shell of itself.
Well, I think it changes how you watch hockey because you can't watch PWHL with an NHL mindset when it comes to certain things.
No, that's fair. I'm not saying it's right that I'm going into this situation with that particular mindset. All I'm saying is that it just, for me, it feels a little weird.
Yeah, it is interesting. If you're a newcomer, it is interesting to see how those rules are. But I think that's also, I mean, and I think one day it'll change. I think maybe one day, I'm not sure when, that these rules might change. So will be able to trade a draft pick as the league grows. But it is interesting to see how this league navigates its first couple of years and saying that, well, there are some things that we can and we cannot do. We're not in a position yet to have 3, 4, 5, 6 trades. We're not in that spot yet. Maybe we will be one day, but for right now, we're not ready for that. So.
It is something to think about, and it is something to look into. So, hopefully, we get a little more flurry of action between, say, teams in the PW. But of course, trying to have the first, I guess, inaugural trade for a trade deadline isn't really something to scoff at, I guess, in this situation. So, still pretty cool.
Yeah, Marsh, what are your views on it?
Yeah, I mean, as we said, it's a growing league. Only a couple teams right now. We have to think about, like, what are the implications of being able to make so many trades so early in a league's existence, or trade draft picks and whatnot. We have to think of, like, how many roster spots exist, and the fact that there aren't, like, farm teams for people to grow and develop and be held. As if you're trading picks and you're trading people, if someone has an excess, that means another person's gonna have to go.
Yeah.
Right. And we're in a position of, we don't want that, because that's actually going to diminish the league more than anything. Because we've seen it in the WNBA with several, like, really, really good picks, but, like, how many people make it out of, like, the preseason era into the regular season, and how many people's contracts get canceled and whatnot. We don't want that, right? So they're trying their best to avoid that, and keeping things to a minimum happens to be the strategy. It is what it is. When we grow, you can enhance what trades look like throughout the league.
Of course. And I think that is something that we are going to have to fully consider, especially as fans of the PW. But ideally speaking, I would like to see a little bit more going forward. That said, it's going to take some time, and hopefully, we get some more excitement out of it from there. All right. Last but not least, we are going to look into Quinton Byfield, basically heating up his, I guess, his resume in regards to his play. As it stands right now, Homeboy has scored in 5 straight games. As it stands right now. Also helping the Kings beat the Predators 1-0 in overtime on Saturday night. This is a very considerable thing, not only for just people who look like us, but also for Black hockey excellence in general. It's very rare to see Black players actually be able to try and, take the spotlight from, say, other various players, like, for example, an Alexander Ovechkin or Sidney Crosby or Vinny LeCavalier at one point, or Steven Stamkos, or even an Austin Matthews, even though Austin Matthews actually is technically a player of color. But at the same point in time, it's like it's very refreshing to finally see, say, someone from a different background be able to come up and say cause some damage in this situation. Of course, Avery and Marsha, I want to hear your thoughts on this real quick. How are we feeling about Homeboy right now?
Go ahead, Marsha.
One time for the Saga / York region mans. They need some recognition out here in this world. Thank you, Quentin. You're doing great things. But no, I mean, Dave, you said it. Like, it's so cool to, like, as a bare minimum, have that representation, one. But two, aside from that, really see him embrace his skill, embrace his opportunity, and really be recognized for that. Because we know how easy it is for a Black person's skill in any sport to be diminished at first chance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy that we've strayed away from that with Quentin, because he is gifted not only in the way that he skates with stature, like goals in the past 5 games, like good hands. Like we're doing great things here, and as he continues to grow within the league, we'll only see more of that. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, no, I've seen Quentin Byfield once again come into his own as a valued top 9 forward in LA. Has been so fun to see. I remember a couple of years ago, people were saying, see, we knew he shouldn't have been drafted that high. He's a bust. It's not working. The fact that the Kings have had patience with Quentin Byfield and let him cook, let him go to the AHL for a little bit, play for Ontario, and develop his game further and come back up and be a guy who can be a 20-goal guy in the NHL, be a 50, a 60-goal guy, hopefully for a long time, and maybe even be a 70-point guy, or because he's still young. Quentin Byfield is only 22 years old. We don't know what he can be in 5, 6, 7 years, but he's finding a way to stay in his LA Kings lineup, and I love seeing it. And one thing too, Quentin, is that he's always been very ready to say, I'm here for the Black kids who want to be like me back home in Canada, in LA. I profiled him last year for the Hockey News, and one thing Quentin is very aware of is what it means to be a Black hockey player in Southern California. He knows there's going to be kids in that region who are going to be of color and Black and see him play for the Kings and say, hey, there's a Black kid on the Kings. I can be that growing up in Los Angeles as well.
Mm-hmm. Like, not to tie this into hip hop, but like obviously it's very easy to do this, but he definitely like us in this situation. No, I mean, think about it for a second. You've got a bunch of kids in Compton who obviously live in, and like, say, you have an opportunity to not only say mold young minds. No, I know they do. That's the thing, right? But like, again, I don't know if there actually is a hockey program in Compton right now. Real talk though, like it is nice to see something that could potentially be very special, especially in Southern California. So shout out to our boy Quentin right now. Could he potentially be a player on Team Canada within the next year or two?
I wouldn't rule it out, honestly. I legitimately would not rule out him being a guy who at least gets a camp invite to Team Canada camp.
Yeah. I mean, there's him. I don't know what's become of Akil Thomas, because last we heard from him, he was scoring clutch goals for Team Canada and Russia, against Russia at the World Juniors, and ever since then, I haven't really heard much of him since then.
He's been trying to find his way with the Kings. I know he's played 23 games with the Kings, only put up 3 points, and he's been trying to find his way in LA. So he's very much a work in progress, I would say, in terms of someone who can stick in the NHL route.
of course. Wasn't there another line on I believe it was on the Kings where it was like particularly 3 players were all African American at one point?
I believe that was in Ontario, the AHL squad.
Yeah. I wonder what became of the other 2 players
Well, the Kings also have they've also played Andre Lee and Caleb Jones. So the Kings have had quite a few black players over this past season here between Akil Thomas, Andre Lee, Caleb Jones, and Quinton.
Would be nice to see, like, say, an all-black starting 5 or an all-African American starting 5 within the NHL one day.
I mean, I think that certainly could be. I think we're certainly going to get to a place where we have. You've had it before. We've had 5 black NHLs on our roster. It's happened before. We've had it where we've had a lot of black players here on LA. You've had it for years. Always had a bunch of black players in Edmonton. So I think we're getting closer and closer to having 5 black players at one time for an NHL franchise.
Well, it is something to genuinely think about. So we'll definitely keep our eye on that and go from there. All right, so that's pretty much it for this recording of the Third Intermission podcast. Anything you 2 want to bring up before we wrap it up real quick?
Get your rest.
For real.
Yes, and make sure you drink your water as well.
All right, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting us grace the space in between your head talk. We will be back with another episode on this platform. So until next time, this is your boy Dave signing off. So make sure you drink your water, make sure you mind your business. And until next time, deuces.
Bye.